It is often said that Rome was not built in a day, but it is equally true that it could have been destroyed in a single season. When we imagine the Roman Empire, our minds inevitably turn to the glint of the gladius, the disciplined formations of the legions, and the marble columns of the Forum. We picture a civilization secured by military might and political ruthlessness. However, the greatest threat to the survival of Rome did not come from the spear of a Carthaginian, the arrow of a Parthian, or the axe of a barbarian. The deadliest enemy the Romans faced was invisible, relentless, and omnipresent. It was an enemy that thrived in the very density of the population that made Rome great. That enemy was disease, born of stagnation and filth. Today, we will examine how the Roman Empire engineered its way out of biological collapse. We will look beyond the marble facades to uncover the vast, thrumming machine of hydraulic engineering, sanitation, and logistical planning that allowed a city of 1 million people to survive in an era before antibiotics or germ theory. We will explore the massive arteries of stone that brought life, the subterranean veins that carried away death, and the complex social systems that turned hygiene into a ritual of power. This was a battle fought not on the borders, but beneath the cobblestones of the city itself. Stay with us until the end of this documentary, because the way Rome solved this problem reveals a startling truth about the fragility of our own modern cities. To understand the magnitude of this achievement, we must first look at the origins of the city itself. In the beginning, before the emperors and the republic, the site of Rome was not a paradise. It was a nightmare of geography. The 7 hills we know so well rose above a fever-ridden, marshy basin. In the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, the valleys between the hills, where the Roman Forum would eventually stand, were frequently flooded by the Tiber River. This standing water was a breeding ground for mosquitoes carrying malaria, a disease the Romans called bad air or malaria. Without conquering this landscape, Rome would have remained a collection of mud huts on a hilltop, slowly choking on its own waste. The first great challenge, therefore, was not conquering neighbors, but conquering the water table. Under the Tarquin kings in the 6th century BCE, the Romans initiated one of the most ambitious engineering projects of the ancient world, the Cloaca Maxima, or the Greatest Sewer. Initially, this was an open-air canal designed to drain the marshlands into the Tiber. However, as the city grew and the population density increased, the function of the cloaca shifted from simple drainage to the removal of human waste. We must pause here to appreciate the sheer audacity of this solution. In most ancient societies, waste was thrown into the streets or carried to the outskirts. Rome, however, decided to build a river beneath the city. Over centuries, the open canals were covered with stone vaults, turning the ground beneath the Forum into a labyrinth of tunnels. This foundation allowed the city to expand into the valleys, knitting the separate settlements on the hills into a unified urban sprawl. But here is a question for you to consider. Can you imagine what the smell must have been like in a city of 1 million people during a hot Italian summer, even with a sewer system? Write in the comments how you think you would have coped with the olfactory assault of ancient Rome. Having established a way to drain the city, the Romans faced the second, perhaps more critical half of the equation: supply. A sewer system is useless without a constant flow of water to flush it. Furthermore, as the population swelled, the local wells and the Tiber River became too polluted to drink. The solution was the aqueduct, a marvel of civil engineering that transformed Rome from a thirsty town into a hydraulic empire. The fundamental engineering principle behind the aqueduct was gravity. This sounds simple, but in practice, it required a precision that rivals modern surveying. The Romans had to locate springs high in the mountains, sometimes 50 or 60 kilometers away, and transport that water to the city center using nothing but the subtle decline of the terrain. The gradient had to be perfect. If the slope was too steep, the water would rush with destructive force, eroding the channel and bursting the pipes. If the slope was too shallow, the water would stagnate. The standard gradient was often as slight as 34 centimeters per kilometer. To achieve this, Roman engineers used a tool called the chorobates, a long wooden bench with water levels and plumb lines. We can visualize the surveyor, standing in the rugged Apennine terrain, calculating a line that would have to hold true for decades of construction. When a mountain blocked the path, they did not go over it, they tunneled through it. When a valley opened up, they built the iconic stone arcades we recognize today. These bridges were not merely aesthetic. They were designed to maintain that crucial, constant gradient line high above the valley floor. However, the true secret to the longevity and durability of these structures lay in a specific material technology. While the Greeks had used stone and clamps, the Romans perfected opus cementicium, Roman concrete. The key ingredient was pozzolana, a volcanic ash found near Vesuvius and Rome. When mixed with lime and seawater, this ash triggered a chemical reaction that created a bond incredibly resistant to water and weathering. In fact, Roman concrete gets stronger over time when exposed to seawater, unlike modern concrete which degrades. This material allowed for the construction of the massive arches and vaults required.
Support the water channels. It allowed the Romans to build faster, cheaper, and stronger than any civilization before them. It was a fluid stone that could be poured into wooden forms, adapting to any shape the architect required. Without this specific geological luck, the presence of volcanic ash, the aqueducts that fed the city might never have reached the scale necessary to support 1 million people. We often think of iron or bronze as the metals of empire, but one could argue that Rome was an empire built on grey, volcanic mud. What do you think was the most important Roman invention? Was it the gladius, or was it concrete? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Let us now examine the structural and organizational genius required to distribute this water once it reached the city. The water did not simply pour out of a pipe into the streets. It arrived at high pressure at a structure called the Castellum Aquae, or water castle. This was a massive settling tank and distribution center located at the highest point of the city section it served. Inside the castellum, the velocity of the water was slowed and sediment was allowed to settle. From there, the water was separated into 3 priority lines. The first line went to the public basins and fountains. This was the water for the common people, accessible to everyone for free. The second line went to the public baths, the thermae. The third line, and the one that would be cut off first in times of drought, went to private homes of the wealthy, who paid a tax for the privilege of running water. This hierarchy of water distribution reveals the social logic of the empire. The survival of the masses was prioritized over the luxury of the few, at least in theory. By ensuring that public fountains never ran dry, the state maintained order. A thirsty mob is a dangerous mob. Moreover, the overflow from these fountains and baths did not go to waste. It was directed into the sewers,
providing the constant flushing mechanism required to keep the cloaca maxima functioning. It was a unified cycle. The water came in, served the people, cleaned the city, and washed the deadliest enemy out into the sea. We must also delve into the internal systems of the most famous consumer of this water, the Roman baths. The thermae were not just places to wash, they were the social condensers of Rome. But behind the beautiful mosaics and steam lay a complex industrial heating system known as the hypercaust. The floor of the bathhouse was raised on stacks of tile or stone pillars, usually about 2 feet high. Outside the building, slaves tended massive furnaces that pushed hot air and smoke into this hollow space under the floor. The heat radiated up through the floor tiles and was drawn up through hollow clay tubes called tubuli, embedded in the walls. This enveloped the room in radiant heat, keeping the caldarium, hot room, steamy without filling it with smoke. This system represented the pinnacle of Roman mastery over the elements. Fire and water, tamed and engineered to create a sanctuary of health in the middle of a crowded, dirty city. The baths were where the Romans scrubbed away the pathogens of the street, exercised, and maintained the physical robustness that their culture idolized. However, constructing and maintaining this infrastructure required logistics on a continental scale. The labor force for these projects was immense. While the legions themselves were often used as engineers and laborers during times of peace, keeping them fit and occupied, the bulk of the dangerous work in the quarries and tunnels fell to slaves. We must visualize the logistics of materials. Millions of bricks, tons of volcanic ash, and endless carts of timber for scaffolding. Lead was another crucial material. The Romans manufactured thousands of miles of lead pipes, or fistulae, to carry water from the distribution tanks to the fountains and villas. These pipes were standardized in size, stamped with the name of the manufacturer and the owner, creating an early form of industrial quality control. We often hear about lead poisoning contributing to the fall of Rome. While it is true that lead is toxic, Roman water was so hard, rich in calcium carbonate, that the insides of the pipes quickly became coated in a thick layer of mineral deposits, preventing much of the lead from leaching into the water. Stay with us, because we will return to the question of Roman health paradoxes in just a moment. But first, consider this. If you had to build a water system for a city of 1 million people today, using only manual labor and gravity, how long do you think it would take? Decades? Centuries? The Romans were constantly building and repairing. It was an endless task. Beyond the majestic aqueducts and the luxurious baths, there were hidden, less visible systems that played a crucial role in this war against disease. We must speak of the latrines. In a city like Rome, public latrines were common. These were not private stalls, but long benches of stone with keyhole-shaped openings where citizens sat side by side, socializing while doing their business. Beneath these benches ran a constant stream of water, usually diverted from the runoff of the baths. This water carried the waste immediately into the sewer system. In front of the bench ran a small channel of clean water. Here, the Romans used the xylospongium, a sea sponge attached to a stick, to clean themselves. They would rinse the sponge in the running water, use it, rinse it again, and leave it for the next person. While this system was advanced compared to a hole in the ground, it brings us to the wow feature of Roman ignorance. They understood engineering, but they did not understand microbiology. The shared sponge was a magnificent vector for bacteria and parasites. The sewers, while effective at moving waste, lacked S-traps, meaning that sewer gases, and occasionally rats or even flames caused by methane buildup, could rise back up into the latrines. There are recorded instances of Romans being injured by exploding toilets. It serves as a reminder that engineering without biological science has its limits. This brings us to a critical question. Why don't we recreate this system today? If it lasted for 1,000 years, is it not superior? The answer lies in the fundamental difference between Roman physics and modern physics. The Roman system was a flow-through system. It required massive, constant volumes of water because they had no way to treat the water or stop the flow easily. Today, we use closed, pressurized systems powered by electricity and pumps. We treat water to remove microscopic pathogens the Romans didn't know existed. And we treat our sewage before releasing it, rather than dumping it raw into the river. Furthermore, we cannot recreate their system because we cannot replicate their economy. Roman engineering was made possible by cheap, coerced labor and an endless supply of raw materials commandeered from conquered provinces. To build a solid stone aqueduct spanning 50 kilometers today would be economically impossible compared to laying a steel pipe. However, the modern relevance of the Roman approach cannot be overstated. We see in their work a commitment to redundancy and over-engineering. They built structures 5 times stronger than necessary because they intended them to last forever. In our age of disposable infrastructure and short-term planning, the Roman aqueduct stands as a rebuke. They understood that water is not just a commodity, it is a strategic resource and the foundation of civil order. Ultimately, the Roman Empire survived its deadliest enemy, disease, not by defeating it completely, but by managing it through brute force engineering. They washed the city daily with hundreds of millions of liters of water. They diluted the enemy. It was a victory of volume, of organization, and of civic will. They proved that civilization is, at its core, a separation of water from waste. When that system eventually collapsed in the 6th century AD, after the aqueducts were cut by besieging Goths, the population of Rome plummeted from 1 million to less than 50,000. The empire didn't just fall because of the sword, it fell because the taps ran dry. As we look at our own aging infrastructure, our crumbling bridges and leaking pipes, we have to ask ourselves, are we maintaining the systems that keep our own deadliest enemies at bay? Or are we taking for granted the miracle of clean water that the Romans worked so hard to standardize? Thank you for joining us on this journey through the veins of the Roman Empire. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history and engineering, please write in the comments. What modern city do you think has the most impressive engineering? And don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss a lesson from the past.